Hello, YouTube world out there. Hello, family, or anybody else that's watching my videos. This is the next series in the Hey, Dad, I want to hear your story. I have not read these, or I have not even filled in any of the prompts here. I figured this one, I'm just going to wing it. So here we go. First question. Oh, and this is under the topic of beginnings, right? So if you remember from the last video, we went through the teenage years and now we're in the beginnings. It says, what did you do after high school? Did you get a job, serve in the military, go to college or a trade school, something else? So, as you may or may not know, I joined the Army right after high school. The next question it says, why did you make the choice? So I'll go into the why, but I left for the Army in July of 1986. So I had enlisted in like January, I think late December, January. So let's say by January 1986, I knew where I was going. When a lot of my friends in high school were saying that they were going to college and that they were looking at colleges and they didn't know where they were going to go and applying and all that stuff, I knew what I was doing. So I had enlisted earlier in the year. I left in July. I went from New Jersey to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training, 8 weeks of basic training. And then after basic training, they put us on a bus and they drove us over to Fort Gordon, Georgia. And from there, I spent 8 months. Was it 8 months? Let me see. July, August, September. I think it was like end of September. So September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. Yeah, I spent 8 months at Fort Gordon. And then from there, I went to Fort Richardson, Alaska, where I spent 2 years and 8 months there. My job in the Army, my military occupational specialty, MOS, was 29 Foxtrot, which was fixed, ComSec, which is communication security, equipment repair. So within that field, you had 29 Foxtrot, which was fixed, and 29 Sierra, which was field. And I chose fixed, which means I worked on equipment that was used for secure communications within like a military data center, a military headquarters, a rear echelon, not front lines kind of guy. So I went out, they called it bivouac in basic training, where you go out and sleep in the woods. I slept in the woods during basic training, and I slept in the woods twice in Alaska. First time was called cold weather indoctrination training. So it was 8 degrees outside. They send you out into the woods with a buddy. They set up an emergency tent where the non-commissioned officers slept, in case there was a problem. So they had a tent with a heater, but all the other people there for the training, they send you out in the woods, and you and your buddy have to build a shelter, and you have to spend the night. So me and Jim Van Kuren spent a night in a snow cave in the woods of Alaska when it was 8 degrees outside. And then, yeah, so my job in the military was pretty chill. I had a almost 9 to 5 job. I'd get up in the morning, 3 days a week. We had PT, physical training. I'd go to breakfast. I'd go to work. I'd get out of work at 4:30, and sometimes I'd have like some type of duty that I'd have to do at night. Otherwise, I was done for the rest of the night and I could do whatever I want. So I'm sure somewhere in this book there'll be more Army stories. I can talk for hours about basic training and things that I've done in the Army, but for the most part, that's the gist of it. The next question was, why did you make this choice? And it's interesting. I have a memory of my dad talking to me about the Army on a trip to Yankee Stadium for a baseball game. So I must have been maybe 9, 10, whatever. And I remember going to this baseball game, I think we had tickets through the church or something. And, we're talking about my future. I mean, I'm a kid, but we're talking about my future. And he was, talking about how the Army is great and you can see the world and you can grow up. My father was drafted pre pre Vietnam, or before Vietnam was really starting to kick up. He had his draft card, and his number was either low or high, whatever. It was going to be a year or two before he was going to get drafted, and because Vietnam was really starting to pick up, his thought was, if I voluntarily go with the beginning of the line for my 2-year enlistment, I won't get sent to Vietnam. And that's exactly what happened. He was drafted, but he went early. He went to basic training. He went to Fort Bliss, Texas. And my father assembled the nuclear warhead on like some Triton missile or whatever this nuclear missile was. And he was stationed at an Italian Air Force base because the Americans supplied the Italians with these nuclear missiles, and he worked on that base. So he was there. So anyway, my father always talked about the Army. He always talked it up how great it was. And if you remember from previous videos, I was a horrible student in high school. So my thinking was, if by the grace of God I got accepted into a college, I wasn't going to do very well. And my parents were not by any means or wealthy or affluent. They were paying for Tammy's college because she was in the army, or she was just finishing her college when I was going to go. And I'm like, well, I know my parents struggled to pay for her college. They don't have any money to pay for mine. So I'll just make their decision about college easier. I'm not going to go to college. I'll go into the Army. So that was pretty much the motivation for me going into the service. And the rationale was, after 4 years, if I want to then go to college, maybe I'll be in a better position and I can. So that's the reason why I went into the Army after high school. Is that if you went to college or trade school, what was your major, the focus of your education? Well, so if we fast forward after the Army, so I get out of the Army, I drive from Alaska to Spokane, Washington with my good friend Terry, and I lived at his house for a couple weeks. Terry and I were both just kind of deciding what to do. I at the time, and I guess there's a million reasons why, but I didn't feel like going home. I did not feel like going back to New Jersey. So while I was in the Army, I was tagged for a special duty assignment to do asbestos removal and abatement in the family housing of Fort Richardson. So if you think of hundreds of apartment buildings on base where families lived, and in the basement of these apartment buildings was asbestos insulation. And if you know anything about asbestos, it's a carcinogen. If you breathe in the asbestos fibers, they can cause cancer, mesothelioma. They can cause a wide variety of respiratory issues and death. So you either have to remove the asbestos from the housing, which is extremely expensive and time consuming, or you abate it, meaning you just wrap it in fiber or in plaster Paris, almost like the stuff that you would put on for a cast. You wrap up the pipes and it will keep the fibers from getting into the air, and you can prolong the life of the buildings. So I got tagged for this duty assignment. I spent months doing that. So I had kind of a skill in doing asbestos work when I got out of the Army. Me and Terry wind up getting jobs in Portland, Oregon. So we left Spokane. We both moved to Vancouver, Washington, because Terry's brother, Richard, lived there. And we both got a job at a company doing asbestos removal, and we had to drive from Vancouver, Washington, which is right across the border from Portland, down into Oregon to Toledo, Oregon, at a Georgia Pacific paper mill. and we did asbestos removal at this paper mill. So we would drive down Sunday afternoon. We would stay in like a motel that the company paid for, and Monday through Friday, we would work shifts at this paper mill doing asbestos removal and abatement and stuff like that. When I tell you it was the most god awful job in the world, it was hot, it was miserable, it was hot, it was miserable. And after doing that for about a month, I decided I'm done with this. There is no way I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing hard labor like asbestos removal. So I packed everything I have into a U-Haul. I drove cross country, and when I got back to New Jersey, tried to find a job, couldn't find a job, didn't really have, and I wasn't going to do asbestos removal. I didn't really have a marketable skill. I mean, I did learn a lot in the Army, and I grew up in leadership and self-discipline, and I had a basic understanding of basic electronics, et cetera, et cetera. But nothing that was going to land me a job. So I didn't want to spend the next 4 years going to a traditional college or university. So that's why I wind up looking in DeVry. There was down in Woodbridge, New Jersey, was the DeVry office. I drove down there one time just to check it out, and I wind up signing up for classes that started in October of 1990. And my major was going to be telecommunications management. So it was voice networks. Like in office environments, you have all of the office telephones. They're all connected to what's called a PBX. And there's a lot of, at the time, there was a lot of technology around voice networks and then data networks, your local area networks, your computer, the pre-internet. The internet really hadn't taken off in the in 93, or excuse me, in the 1990, it really hadn't taken off. So this was all of the technology and all of the theory and all of the academics around data networking with a splash of business, accounting and purchasing, and I had English and I had math and creative writing and law, and I had all kinds of other courses that they threw in there. And I ultimately, no, so I'll fast forward. My degree was my major was telecommunications management. I spent 2 years in New Jersey, then transferred to the office in Chicago, Addison, Illinois. It's about an hour outside of Chicago, because DeVry could not give you a bachelor's degree in New Jersey, but they could give you a bachelor's degree in Illinois. So after 8 months of studying and going to school, 2 more semesters or 2 more trimesters in Illinois, I got my bachelor of science degree. And then that was the start of my career. I had a brand new college degree, telecommunications management. I was ready to take on the world. And that was my education post Army. The next question: how did this time period impact who you are today? Well, let me tell you what. The Army did wonders for me when it came to giving me discipline and really taking advantage of, if you are paying for something, you learn how to really take advantage of it, or get the most out of it. So my parents were not paying for my college education. They, they didn't have it. So I used money from the GI Bill, which I think I got like, I'll guess $300 a month. $300 a month paid the rent on the DeVry housing that I lived in, which was an apartment with 3 other guys. And I worked at a TCBY the entire time I was in New Jersey at DeVry. And that money that I got from TCBY was food. So I had GI Bill paid for rent, TCBY paid for food, and most of my college education was either, I got a lot of grants that I never had to pay back because I was poor. Not having made a lot of money in the Army, my I was poor, and I got a lot of grants. I got a lot of loans, so my actual school was paid for as I went. And the period of the Army and just growing up gave me enough discipline that all I did for 2 years, almost all I did, was get up, study, go to school, go to work, and study. That's all I did. I didn't have enough money to pay for cable TV in the apartment. I never went out. Rarely did I go out. And that's all I did. I had the fortitude and the mental discipline to just apply myself and study. I would read chapters, like if we went over chapter 5 in whatever topic, I would spend the weekend oh wait, my phone's going off here. I would spend the weekend rereading that over and over and over again. I would take notes in class. I would come back after class and I would type out my notes. It wasn't just enough to write them down. I actually typed them out. And by typing them out, you're reviewing it, you're learning it more, and I would even sell my notes. So I had a 4.0 for the first 2 years that I was in school. From DeVry wasn't semesters, they were trimesters. You went to school year round. You really didn't have a summer break or anything. So the first trimester, I got straight A's and one B. I think the B might have been in algebra. I wasn't 100% sure, but I got a B in algebra. And every other semester, trimester after that, I got straight A's. And I did that because I was dedicated to say, I'm paying for this. This is my shot at my future. I'm really going to apply myself. And I have to say, it was that time that really helped make me the person that I am. You know, if you want something bad enough, you will study really hard. You'll work hard. You will really, as my father would say, buckle down, and you would do that. So that's how that period impacted who I am today. If you could go back, what, if anything, would you change about this period of your life and why? A couple things I would have done differently. I probably would have saved more money. I think I had mentioned this in one of the earliest videos. In 4 years in the Army, I pissed away about $40,000 because I got paid $10,000 a year and I really had nothing to show for it. So I probably would have done a better job of saving. I would have done a better job of going to school part time while I was in the Army. I had enough free time that I could have done that. I wish I had done that when I was in DeVry. I don't necessarily know that I would do anything different. I mean, you know, there really wasn't much that I could have done differently. I worked at a yogurt shop slinging yogurt. It was just a job that paid me enough money that I could live, I could eat. Um, so there wasn't too many things that I would have changed. After I went to Chicago, um, again, I slacked off a little bit when I was in Chicago. I think I let my GPA go the 8 months that I was there. I let my GPA go from a 4.0 to like a 3.67, 3.68. I mean, you're like, wow, you let it slip. Yeah, I let it slip a little bit. I spent more time having fun with my friends as opposed to sitting at home in my room studying every Friday and Saturday night, because that's what I had done for 2 years. Every Friday and Saturday night I was studying. So when I was in Chicago, I would spend more time. I used to skydive. I think I've told everybody that. I would have taken more care of myself and been more careful when it came to skydiving, because I had a couple of few hard landings that really messed up my back. So I probably maybe would have not done that, or I would think I would have been a little bit more careful with taking care of myself during the period of the Army and even afterwards. Okay, let's look. What do we got here as far as time? We got 19 minutes. All right, maybe I'll. You know what? I'm going to stop it here because the next chapter kicks off with when you were a kid. What did you want to be when you grow up? So I'm gonna end it there. But I will just tell you one funny Army story, because this always sticks with you. If you've ever seen the beginning of the movie Full Metal Jacket. And the gunnery sergeant is screaming at everybody and using profanity and calling them stuff and everything. Although my basic training experience wasn't exactly like that, it was pretty close. Um, I left New Jersey, Newark Airport, fly down to South Carolina, get on an Army bus. Late at night, they take you to the reception station. So you're there for a couple days while you do your in processing. You got to do your medical exam. You get all your Army uniforms. There's tons of things you have to do before you actually start basic training. And then they put you on what's called a cattle car. It's just like a big tractor trailer transport bus, and they take you to where you're actually going to do basic training. And the place where I went was called Tank Hill. It was this old World War II style barracks in July and August of in South Carolina. Hot, like Tarzan hot. And I will never forget, you're on this bus, you're scared out of your mind, you have no idea what's going to happen. And this big, gargantuan, huge black man, the drill sergeant, gets on the bus, looks over everybody, and he goes, "Welcome to basic training, Fort Jackson, South Carolina. My name is Drill Sergeant Jackson. If you F up," and he did not say F, he said the word, "if you F up, I will smoke your ass. Now," and he started screaming, "Get off my bus! Get off my bus!" And of course you're like, and you're running off the bus, and you got drill sergeants everywhere screaming at you. You're in your face screaming at you. The spit is coming out of their mouth. They're screaming at you. You got one in each ear and one in front of you, and the three of them are screaming at the same time. It was like mass panic. So that was one little Army story that I'd like to share. Maybe next time I'll share another. With that, I will close this video. You have yourself a wonderful day, and we'll talk again soon. Take care. Bye. How do I stop this now? Oh, there we go.